All right. So that's new. I've never heard that sound before. But I guess legally we have to let you know that we're recording. So so today we're looking at contacting employers, job development, and which is probably I'd say it's pretty after obviously getting to know the person and kind of what works for them and figuring out what services and supports will work best for where they are now. And we're looking at community integrated employment here, not just what a lot of you we've worked with customized employment. We'll talk about some other stuff today, and we'll get into it as we move forward. So that's definitely the most important thing. Making sure that the appropriate services and supports are selected. But after that, I think the second most important thing is this topic. Is how do we engage and contact or network, whatever word, employer engagement, business engagement, employer outreach, contacting businesses or employers. So this is I think one of the hardest things to do well. I think on the whole, and there's many different approaches, and so today we'll look at some of those. But I would like to make this I know like the last couple of trainings haven't been super interactive. There's some of them where last one I felt like it was just a tough one to make interactive. So this one I would like to ask people. There's a few places where we're going to try to, I'm going to ask you to chat some stuff into the box. It doesn't seem like talking is the best way because we typically, I think we have a smaller group today, but typically it's a bit bigger. But I'm going to ask you some questions and have you respond to those. You'll see them. I'll show them the PowerPoint. I'll type the question in the box and then ask you to reply to it. And also I'll show you some videos, some examples of kind of, I think contacting employers, and I may be wrong about this. And I think part of this, when we start to get on the ground and we're able to spend time together, that's not just virtual. I'd love to hear your opinions about stuff and figure out kind of where maybe my ideas are maybe not exactly where things are at, or maybe there's better language or a better approach. I tend to view contacting employers as primarily a marketing concern. And I don't mean that like in a crass, I don't mean that marketing. I think marketing fixed, but I don't mean that in like an old school sales or kind of the hard sell, that kind of stuff. But I think if you think of marketing as kind of and again, I'm not a marketing expert or anything, but as just the method or the function of communicating, of sharing, who you are and what you do and what you have to offer. And essentially, if you think about what business is or what all jobs are roughly, there's a problem to be solved or a job that needs done, right? Which is job that needs done is typically tied to a problem that needs solved. And so that's what businesses do, but also businesses need to make their potential customers aware of what they're offering, right? And I think that's in general, I think that's in general pretty big, again, I'm speaking generally, obviously, I'm not speaking for your experience necessarily in South Dakota, but I think it's a general kind of rule of thumb that and again, I apologize if those of you were customized employment trained, but that businesses don't really know who we are, and what we do generally, right? Like in terms of cachet in the popular culture and popular awareness, I don't think we're really well known. I think it'd be interesting, and if I got to know you, just wondering how'd you get into the job you have now. Oftentimes, I didn't know this job existed, growing up. Maybe if you had like a family member or personal experience, you may have. I think all of us have experienced, people with disabilities, but in terms of voc rehab or services. But I think that oftentimes a lot of us kind of were surprised, to learn that this is something, that people can do, or that there's these systems set up to help people work. And I think in general, businesses haven't heard of us much. Sometimes I think we're not quite sure exactly how to talk about what we do. And that's not bad. I think that's actually good. I think it's hard to talk. I think it's a hard thing. I mean, I think struggling, it's not good that we don't have a narrative and that we don't have a cachet and that we're not known. That's not good. It's better than being known the wrong way, so that's good. But I think that what is good is that maybe some of the reasons why we're maybe not fully known is because we haven't figured out how to talk about it well. And that's usually because sometimes it's hard to, if we're working with a person, it's hard to speak globally. It doesn't make sense sometimes. So I think that's some stuff to just struggle with is how do you speak broadly, from like a 30,000 foot level? How do you speak from the middle kind of, how do you network and how do you connect people? And then how do you speak from an individual perspective? And today's not going to be about the answers to that. Just today's going to be about sharing, just some of the rationales, I think, some of the approaches, show you some examples. And then, it is something, again, I think I had sent out just a quick, I think Jordan had sent out on my behest, just some questions I had about marketing and about how you share what you do. And I think, again, it's not the end all, because if you're doing a bad job, it doesn't matter what you market, your product or service is crappy. So that's obviously the most important thing. But I'm just, I think it's interesting, and something I'd like to share, if people want to share as we move forward, in terms of how you talk about success stories. I've had businesses that I've talked to that have said, you tell me all this stuff, I don't know what any of it means. Like, just show me, like, send me something that shows me what you do, And oftentimes when we look into that, it's a bunch of words, and a lot of times it's talking about the services we offer. It's really about us. And I think that can be an effective approach, but I just think there's been a lot of business people in general, community people, and people are aware of what we do, that it's just confusing. And so I think ultimately the best way to show what we do is through an example, through a success story. And there's many ways to show that. And then I think the second best way to show what we do is to have business people vouch for us, and have business people that are available to act as I don't know if ambassador is the right word, or I'm not sure, but just as kind of testimonials, as somebody who knows business, or who, and can speak from a perspective of how it worked for them. So I'm sorry, my just got a quick text. So anyway, and I think that fits obviously for any customer. If you think about who our customers are, multiple customers, from a family member, if a mom or dad is kind of worried about employment, Social Security benefits, or whatever, the scary, just work being not a predictable place all the time. And that's the best person to help them understand that is another parent, VRCs, if you're working with the VRCs, kind of new to something, it's great to have a VRC that you've worked with in the past, right? That, so on and so forth. So I think that same with employment. So anyway, that's part of, I think what I'd really love to work on, again, as we move forward. The next few trainings are going to be on job development. I mean, the next 3. So we'll spend the next quarter of the year talking about job development ideas, like the next one, job carving or analysis, job matching, that kind of stuff. So I think that the best way to do a lot of this stuff is by illustration, and to illustrate or show people, you have to have done it, right? So, okay. Are there any, and let's see, let me make sure the chat is working. I'm just gonna type in hi everyone. Get that going. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. And it's storming here, so hopefully we'll be okay. Share screen. All right. Okay, is everybody able to, so I want to be able to have the chat, be able to see the chat while I see this. It seems everybody can see that okay. Just want to make sure. Of course, I cannot see the chat. Okay. Okay, great. So figure it out. So today we're talking about contacting employers. Before we get started, or as we get started, just want to remind you that the community practice topic that we're talking about this Thursday, the 27th, is going to be working with individuals with criminal records. You know, a lot of what we talk about now will be, well, it's relevant to anybody, but you'll see, I think how you can, depending on what barrier people are experiencing, what approach may work and how you talk to businesses and what businesses you approach. And then the next training webinar, something like this, will be June 28th. And we'll talk about job. Oh, and I wrote the wrong thing there. I'm sorry. It's actually job matching, not job carving. My bad. I looked at the wrong one. Okay. So, so when we say employers, and again, this is kind of where I'd like to ask the chat to be activated. And Jordan, I'm so sorry, but I cannot for the life of me see the chat.
Russell, I'm able to see the chat.
Okay, awesome. Yes, very much helpful. Sorry to rope you into this. I should be able to figure that out. So I'm just, if people could just type in, like when we say employers, I mean, I was just, you know, I'm not an economist or, but I kind of broke it down. Well, there's kind of 4 general types of employers, you know, I thought of that. It's just gonna, that doesn't mean it's right. I'm just curious, could you type, like what types, when we say employers, what do we mean by that, right? You know, what are the different types of employers? Do you think about structure and how they are, you know, the organizations that employ people, right? And typically what we mean by that is they have a payroll, right? What are the, if you could type, so the 4, Jordan, could you type that in? What are the 4, what I was gonna do is I was gonna type in the question and ask people to respond so that, because this saves the chat, right? And so we'd be able to kind of organize it like that for information. So Jordan, if you wouldn't mind typing in, what are the, I wrote 4, but it doesn't have to be 4. You maybe way more, or I don't think there's less, but just curious what you all, you know, when you say employer, what does that mean? I think we typically have one thing we have in mind, but there are others too. People could just type that in. And while you're doing that, I'll see if I can find the silly chat. I think it's hidden behind my windows. Ah, here we go. There you go. Hello. Cool. Okay. Hello. Awesome. I hope this is okay to do it. I think it's better than asking people to talk because then everybody can go. Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. Corporate small. Okay. Great. Yeah. All right. So I think those are all great. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. You know, I do think that, and where you know, typically, you know, employers is interesting to me. And somebody had mentioned it. I don't know if you were and I apologize. I just, you know, we did customized employment training, but I have this thing where I have tried to put down the word employer and add business, you know, because I think that is more indicative of why they exist, that employers, you know, don't typically exist to hire people, you know, that's not their point. You know, the point is to do business, and then it depends on the structure. But you know, it's quibbling over. I think it's nice to understand that the bottom line kind of thing. And I think every type of business has that, but I think all the other stuff is great. So yeah, in general, what I thought, what I came up with was that they're essentially private, you know, kind of for-profit businesses. You know, so they're owned by somebody, right? And that maybe, like Misty had said, yeah, I think one of the variables I have down is like big to small. Like within each, there's probably a big to small variable. So, you know, there's an owner operator type business. We'll talk about that in a second. A non-employer employer, I guess, if that makes sense, which is a bit of they're a business without a payroll yet, but they can, you know, they may hire somebody. Or they eventually will, right? Most businesses start like that. And then like all business, I guess, start, you know, have employees when they start. But then and then all the way to like corporate owned. And that may be like S corps, where they're small, held like that, or they may be like publicly traded, corporations. And also, I think like franchises. I think franchises also fit in. There's like probably a spectrum, right, of like Amazon, all the way down to my neighbor who mows lawns, right? If that makes sense. So I think those are like the spectrum of maybe of privately owned businesses. And then nonprofit, which Laura had mentioned. I think that it's a we think about employer. A lot of us have worked in that setting or currently work in that setting. That's one as well. And again, I think big to small is just something that's it's a theme in everything, right? I mean, I would recommend if you haven't read Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher. It's just this really great book that just argues that he's like, I'm not against anything like in ideology. I have no ideology except that things just get too big, and we need to keep things small. And that same nonprofit, right? You have a little nonprofit, again, that has 2 or 3 people doing whatever down the street versus, or the nonprofit, like, I guess, Little League is what we're doing right now, right? Little League, I think, is a nonprofit. And so they do employ people, but not that many. And the local level, and they have a national level. And then you have like Red Cross and those kind of things, which I think are also nonprofits. Some of us work for, or Goodwill, right? Big, and Goodwills are kind of bigger, I guess, in our world. And then you have public, right? So typically that means governmental employees. So I guess always maybe. So it's city, county, state, federal, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be an employer. And then I threw I haven't had tons and tons of experience, but some. But the fourth one I threw in there was co-ops. That's kind of an interesting. They're privately owned, but they're all I don't know tons about them, but I'm pretty sure anybody, and a lot of them, if you work there, eventually you have ownership, right? It's kind of the democratic workplace ideal. So those were the 4 I kind of thought of. That we had to, that I bumped into. Does anybody have any others that I maybe missed? And I love, thank you for the, I love the story about HR. I'd love to, again, I want to go through all this when I'm done. Did I miss anything? Did anybody? And so, cool. And Jordan, I can see the chat now, but I've lost the people for some reason. There we go, I got them both now. Okay. Sorry. I think by a year and a half into it, I know. Okay. So, so I think it's just, when we think about contacting businesses or contacting employers, I just think it is important. I mean, there's always and we'll talk about this, there's always oh, that's cool, no problem. I love, anytime share whatever you want. I think there's always I need a job, any job, right? And that's, where I need a job today because I have to pay rent tomorrow, right? And I think depending on, I think people's situations, and I think that's something, as we move on to job development and working with people in different situations, that I just think understanding where they're at, what their immediate needs are, what their, medium kind of goals are and long-term goals are, I think helps us figure out a bit of the approach we're going to take. If somebody's in VR, I mean, VR wants we'll look at some data in a little bit, but I mean, the goal is, a successful closure 90 days after stability. And so there is, so I think that there is, you have to balance to the person is where they're at, obviously counseling, our time with them and what service and support seem to be fit best. But then also think about, that's one side, and the other side is the employer. So, when you're thinking about where you're approaching, I just think it is good to have a little bit of thought about the culture and motives, right, of each. So, like with I think in every type of business, there's always the bottom line consideration, which is primary, right? So, but how much is emphasized, depends on, I think, again, the type of business, the market, I mean, even in nonprofits, I mean, you have a job because you generate enough, I should say, you generate enough revenue, right, to cover your costs of you and about a third or more beyond that, which are the payroll costs and benefits, and taxes, that kind of stuff. And it's in co-ops, I mean, it's market rationale. The market looks different. In government jobs, it's a little bit different, but still, it's bottom line in that there's work to be done and quality work to be done, and so the investment in there's consideration about budgets and grants or wherever stuff comes from, but it's a little bit different. But still, I think the work business needs to be done. Government exists, business is a little different, but that they have a job to do, if that makes sense, a need to meet. So I think that it's important, when we think about that, about where we're going to go, that we think a bit about, about those different types of employers and kind of where that fits. And then also, and I think a lot of this too depends, if you think about the size or the ownership. I just think you can make certain assumptions that the smaller the business is, the easier it is to reach the decision maker, right? So the more control you can have or you can exert on the process, the smaller the business, right? It's again that nonprofit or government. I think accessing your government representatives, or it's in West Virginia, is a lot easier than when I'm in Florida. It's not as easy to get people's attention because there's a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on. But I think that, so you have big to small, it's a variable, but also you have ownership, right? And so that's, I think, when we think about employers and what we mean, I just think there's kind of a pros and cons. When we think about businesses that you're approaching and how you can get their attention and how you can exert influence on the process. So the problem, again, and a lot of y'all probably bumped into, we're working with somebody right now who we went through discovery. He's in Michigan, and they're like, he had transportation theme was one of his themes, and Christian faith is another, and then I'm blanking on the other one right now, but maybe culinary cleanliness, I can't remember. But so they end up, he has this connection with this school district he grew up in, and like he's really into, his art and photography, that's what it was. He's really into these school buses because he rode them when he was younger, and he just something he's really had some good friends who were drivers and assistants. And he would one of the things he does, he goes and he takes pictures of different school buses and knows like their numbers and kind of, it's unique. I don't know, just really into transportation, not just so he's explored taking pictures of other types of transportation, but the school buses are really the thing. And so it just so happens, we finish up discovery. I'll show you his, I can't remember, culinary or art photography, but third thing, but I'll show you we have his career profile as an alternative to a resume. So we have some contacts there, right? Too, as VRC knows, because they work with the schools, so they know the people who do work in HR there. But still, there's a problem, and the problem is it's a school district, which means it's probably either county or locally ran, and so there's nobody there like they can make the decision to say, hey, instead of us putting an application or a resume, and this young man does not have tons of work experience, right? So like it's not, the getting to know him is not the best way, is like to see a resume first, right? Or an application, because that is not his best foot forward. And I'm worried that that'll send impressions that's going to be a negative one, right? And it's hard to overcome a negative first impression. We all know that from when we were very small. And so we're trying our best to say, we know that everybody has to go this way, but is there any way we can not do that with him, right? That Spencer, that we can find another way to do that, and so the problem is navigating that. Going into a governmental employee, that it's going to be really hard to alter the HR process, even if you know somebody. And so the negotiation was that they sent this thing I'll show you, and then the application too, kind of as a part of the process, so they could get that basic information. But they sent the career profile, which I'll show you. And then the second part, so then it's going to, okay, great, well, let's meet. Well, in the way that we, if you get to know Spencer, like meeting a traditional interview in Zoom is not the best way. Again, you need to be around him, right? And let things ease into it. Have a conversation. But if you start like with the questions about, the traditional interview questions about, what are you good at, or where do you see yourself in 5 years, that kind of stuff, it just doesn't quite fit Spencer's experience. And anyway, so what we're saying is, could we do something different? If we have to do an interview, could we do it kind of informal, and where we could talk about Spencer's career profile, maybe have, we could suggest some topics, so you're not in control of that. So I just think that whichever business that you approach, or what type of business or type of employer, there's going to be considerations about how that method of reaching out, of contacting employers fits the individual you have in mind. Some approaches, traditional kind of placement approaches, they tend to do kind of, and again, I'll learn this as we go on, as I get to know y'all more. The traditional approach towards placement is there's like a pool of employees or potential workers or clients or whatever. And when we're going out talking to businesses, we have a number of different people in mind, right? So I think that even when you're doing that, who gets into which pool? I think that there's some thoughts that we need. And you guys are already doing this, I'm sure. But to me, I think, the big to small, the culture motives, if you're in a nonprofit, mission is super, super important. Then it may be good to do some research on that and think about, how mission, how the person's story or what you've learned about the person can match to the mission. If a governmental service, if maybe somebody used a similar service when they were younger or growing up, or now even, and figure out, thinking of how that may, help to get a foot in the door, right? But ultimately, I think, what I tell everybody is just tough. When you're at a bigger business, it's hard to have power over the process. And what happens is you lose control, and you're not sure exactly how to influence the process. So, I think the idea is if we can make the smaller, the more responsive, and we can make a big business or a big nonprofit or government act like a small business a bit more by knowing somebody through networking, which we'll talk about, or relationship, social capital mining, that kind of stuff. But still, there are some barriers that in certain types of businesses, depending on the culture and kind of what they're doing, that you may not be able to circumvent, or you just have to know the absolute right person to circumvent. So I wanted to ask, so ownership, a lot of times, how, the types of employers just means how are decisions made? It's kind of a shorthand, kind of a thinking tool for thinking about, just anticipating what you're going to bump up against. So I did want to ask, this is a question. I can write this to everybody since I can see it. I just could people write, and there's maybe some of it there, but that question is where, so does most job, sorry. And I'm going to give you 4 options then. So okay, so profit, non-profit, gov. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm on the spot, so I'm getting nervous. So co-op. Okay, so there's that. There's if I think if those are the 4 types of businesses, if you were to choose one, type it in now. Okay, cool. So when you think about now, job development, where does most of it happen? So if you could write in, just write. You don't have to just write. And again, if you could do 90% in private nonprofit, 10% in government, whatever. However you want to answer, that's fine. But if you could type in where most of yours, okay, private nonprofit. Thanks, Brenda. Other people, if you wouldn't mind. Okay. That's private. For profit. Yep. Okay. Does anybody of the group, so as you type that in, my follow-up question, is there anybody who has had some success with nonprofits, governmental, or co-ops? Co-ops are not as I don't bump into them as often, but can anybody? I mean, if nobody types anything, I'm going to assume that Habitat. Okay, go on. Not for profit, and the soup kitchen hires people. Goodwill. Okay. Bryce, I'm sorry. The soup kitchen hires people. Awesome. Oh, awesome. Young man hired at A Green Co-op. Who is, and this is part of typing, Jacine, if I'm saying your name, I'm so sorry. Would you mind talking about that a little bit? Or you don't, I mean, your camera's on, so hopefully you, would that be okay? Do you know, let me, do you know how to mute yourself? There you go. I think you're still muted, Jacine. Huh. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. I wonder if your mic is off somehow. We'll talk about it later, or try to figure that out. Or Jordan, do you have any ideas? No ideas, Jordan? Sorry, I didn't. Okay. The Golden Gate Bridge is kind of hiding your head movements there. So, okay, well, I'd love to hear about that later. So, okay, so oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
So I had a young man that was employment skills, and he had wanted to work at the grain elevator, kind of like other family members had done. So we went there, and I proposed the job to the new manager. It happened to be a new manager of that grain elevator, and he went to corporate and got it approved. And so then he did his employment skill program there. Can you hear me still? No.
Yeah, I hear you great. Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of it, he had to, in order to be hired permanently, he needed to be able to climb the grain elevators and stuff. Which, if you've ever seen a grain elevator, he wasn't going up. He wasn't going up the ladder. He was unloading the semis when they would come into the elevator, the grain and things of that nature. He liked it. It was a good environment.
Cool.
But
did he end up getting hired? He did the work. I'm sorry. He did the work experience. Did he end up staying there after?
No, because he wouldn't climb to the top of the grain elevator.
Yeah. Okay. Those things are pretty high.
Right.
I mean, isn't that like one of the scariest? Like drowning in that is like the worst. Does that actually happen to people?
Right.
Does it really happen to people?
Yes.
Okay. It's like a scene from Friday the 13th, like Jason movie, I think. I remember that. So, okay.
So anyway, they loved him, but you have to do all aspects of the job.
Okay.
To be hired.
Okay.
And that was one thing he wasn't willing to do.
Wasn't willing to do, yeah.
No.
Do they have things where they can hook you up on the side, like when you're rope climbing? So if you fall, you...
This one is in Viborg, South Dakota. And so it's a small elevator. There's no cage around where you climb. You're just free climbing.
Oh, okay.
You know, up the side of it. So
yeah, okay.
A ladder, but there's nothing around you.
How high is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Like 40 feet or?
Maybe.
60 feet, okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like, you know, those rock climbing things, you know, and they have the cable, like that could be a nice adaptive technology. And then they could charge people on the weekends to like climb it and have fun.
Sure.
Cool. So when you said corporate, like, what's that mean in a co-op setting? Like it's a local version of a,
The the Viber co-op had to get permission from the main co-op
okay,
to do this program. They had never done anything like this before. And so they
okay.
weren't quite sure. And they were kind of concerned about maybe liability things,
Yeah,
um, which of course Voc Rehab has insurance that follows them and everything. So
yeah, yeah,
just needed to be talked through.
yeah. Okay, cool. Am I saying your name right, Justine, or
You
is that
are.
wrong?
You
Okay,
are.
awesome. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. So, so moving on, I did want to, and again, if you've been through the C, some of these slides will be familiar, but I think it's good information. So, if you look at just like the data of businesses, that most businesses in the United States, in any state, I think the United States average about 98% of all businesses are small businesses, and this is I think this is non-farm, non-governmental. So if you think about, and I think it's interesting. I think one cool, I don't know if it's an exercise or just kind of market research activity would be just to map out, in the States, or maybe in your area, just just what businesses exist. Like you can probably, go to the SBDC, you can track down that information. And I think I think what we should be doing to some extent, I know I harp on this during the customized training, is our job development should probably reflect what the businesses look like. Um, roughly, if you look at the data, about 99% of all businesses, and this is in 2019, we'll have to see the data. This is last one. I'll look see if I can find 2021 data. Ideas. Maybe some small businesses have not survived, so maybe the percentage will go down a little bit. But in the United States, at a given time, it's 98% are small businesses. And the Small Business Development Center defines small businesses as 500 employees or less. So, so that's important, right? To think, okay, well, 99 out of 100 businesses that exist are going to be small businesses. But then you balance that out with, well, who does most? What about the employees, right? So 99% of all businesses are small businesses there, and they employ roughly 59%. You see 50, I don't know if you can see this this right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but they employ roughly, you can see 58.8% of all South Dakota employees. So if you think about just kind of the distribution of the businesses we're approaching, if small businesses employ roughly 6 and 10 of all employees in the private sector, then and I'm not sure. I apologize. I'm not exactly sure where nonprofits fit in this. I'll look that up. Then maybe we should be talking to small businesses roughly. Or if we're not balanced, maybe we should try to push the balance. We can't turn it on or off overnight, but maybe we should talk to small businesses more. And then, when you look at small businesses, and again, those of you that were in the customized employment training saw this, that roughly, if small businesses are about 98% of all the businesses in the United States, and then of that 98%, roughly almost 75% of those businesses are what's called non-employer businesses. So those are businesses without employees, right? We rarely talk to them, and the rationale may be, well, they don't have any employees. Why am I going to them? I won't show it today, but we have examples where people became the first employee of a business because there was a business need, as somebody had talked about earlier, and we were able to help the business meet that need. And in non-employer businesses, there's no HR. It doesn't exist because they don't have any employees. So it can be really easy to talk to people. Also, when you're doing job development or market research or helping the person find a work goal, these are really good people to talk to because they're close to the ground, very nimble, and very knowledgeable about a certain industry. So just some knowledge about that. And then probably can't see this. Let me see if I can make it bigger. I just took this offline, but this is just general labor market information. It's pretty recent, so up last month. So you can see, obviously, like it's been a rough year. It doesn't go back to March. If you looked at that, that'd be pretty bad, I'm sure. But so civilian labor force, and this is in thousands. So this 600 or 469,000 with 456,000 people who are working. And then it breaks down the different sectors. And I just wanted to show you the governmental part. If we're thinking of government as a potential, like Spencer is right now, it's roughly 78,000 employees, which you do the math, it's roughly 17.29% of every employee. That's how I read the data. So, so I just think it's important, when we talk about approaching, contacting employers, just to understand what an employer is. And we in customized employment project in Michigan, one of the guys, like we met him, and he's just like, I want a government job, and that's his, so boom, and so why do you want a government job? And there's this idea about government jobs. Mainly he was worried about losing his healthcare. He had some really bad information about, he was somebody who received SSDI and SSI, and then when he went to work, he was going to lose his Medicare and Medicaid, which wasn't true. But I think I know that there was a county in Maryland, one of their early employment projects that the county said, if we're talking to businesses and pushing employment, then we should also be hiring people, who are using VR and using other services as well. So I think important to know. Okay, so I wanted to ask a survey, and if you wouldn't mind, just give me, just like we did with the chat before, I'm going to type in the question, and then then I'll read it to you and ask you to say yes or no. I think most of them say that, and it's the reason for me typing it in is so I know what this does. If you've ever used Zoom, it has a printout, and it'll show me a text document, and so I can tell where things are in the questions, and you're answering them. So. Okay, employment services survey. Okay, so the first question, reviewed wants ads. Okay, so so the first question is, and just have you in the last year, recently, within the past year, reviewed want ads for job openings? And again, this is just not good or bad, or I'm just curious what folks are doing. So okay. Yeah, everybody, if you wouldn't mind, everybody take that in. No, if it's okay, I'll put like 30 seconds on the clock for everyone, just to give people time. Okay, or at least when I see them. So, okay, the next one is, have you asked for an application on behalf of somebody else? Okay. Okay. Yeah, right. It's maybe kind of an old question, I guess, huh? Okay, and Desiree, if you wouldn't mind waiting, I apologize. Just the way that the information is, I guess that would, well, I just would like to, it'll help me if you would mind also answering when I ask the question. Okay, taken or sent. So this is kind of some research from my part too. Someone on an interview with HR. Okay, right there. So go through relatively quickly. Okay. And Brenda, same thing. If you would, well, if you missed it, I guess that would be okay. Next one is sought jobs at like big corporations, like, Walmart's, McDonald's, Burger King, Target, etc. Again, the idea is that's where a lot of jobs are, so that seems okay. Okay. Asked. Next one. Asked an employer if they're hiring. Oops. Okay. Next one. Sought jobs at stores that are strictly retail. The definition of retail is essentially nothing's being produced or made there, right? So it's like, stuff. It's the end of the supply chain. Everything's boxed. There's no added value services. Things are just on the wall to be bought. Okay. Next question, and let me know if you have any questions about this. I'll explain it. Approach the company in your organization, in your agencies, the place you work, supply chain. So supply chain means it's a place where your business does business with, right? So your organization is buying things. So like it could be paper, people do your car, your vehicles, your accountant, lawyer, bank, the construction company, maybe it does repairs. Your landlord, maybe if you're renting. Okay. So the next question is approach a company in your personal supply chain. So that means like not in your professional capacity, but a place where you are a customer, right? Or like if you I mowed my lawn yesterday. So maybe if I were to pay somebody to mow my lawn or do the weeds or put the concrete down, take care of the dogs, a vet. Okay. 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 This is, I guess, for people who work in nonprofits. Have you had a board member assist you at the nonprofit? Getting somebody a job. Thanks everybody for doing this. I know it may be a little bit tedious. And then the last one has your executive director, CEO, whoever that is, the highest part, the leader who's paid at the highest level. Have they helped you, assisted? Or again, maybe somebody, not you, or somebody doing employment. Okay. Okay, cool. So thank you. So moving on, I don't, and I did want to ask about this again. I know, again, I'm not trying to put people on the spot, but this is something that I would like, not outside of the training topic. We'll spend time on this when we do the community integrated training or community integrated employment training. We'll be talking about stuff like, marketing what we're using as tools. But Jordan did send out the a question about, what you all, I was actually asking for examples, could I see it? Again, I was thinking of myself from a business perspective. I talked to you, learned blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that sounds cool. Show me something. And I was just curious, what would you, we used to call those leave behinds, or I know we have business cards, but I was just curious, like I wanted to ask again, if anybody had anything they'd like to share. So I'm just curious, how, like if we're using, and I'll show you some examples, but obviously this day and age, digital is where everything is. Paper and stuff is still super important, but just the access of digital stuff and kind of the cost of it is, in terms of being able to manipulate it, is very cool. So thinking about, well, how do you talk about your employment services? How do you market your employment services? Right. So I was thinking web, social media, print, or videos. Cool. Thanks, Jordan. Do you want me to say that? Or Jordan, do you want me to announce the word? Sorry. Knowledge. Okay. And then, or success stories, right? And this is, again, something that we're going to spend a lot of time on is, again, it's the old show your work kind of thing. Do you have any testimonials? When you have a good outcome, how are you sharing that with the world? Okay, cool. Do you have that ability for hire pamphlet in a digital format, Justine? Not, oh, you're muted right now. Sorry. You're still muted, sorry. Okay. So Justine, you're still muted, sorry. I'm not sure. I don't know if I can. Okay, and some folks are saying Facebook, awesome. And social media postings, cool. Oh, there you go, Justine. Oh, now it's like before. There we go.
Still can't?
I got you.
Goodness, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, I do not have it in digital.
Okay. Thumbs down. Cool, okay.
I have like a flyer, can you see that?
I do, yep.
With the information, and I've just attached my business card to the back.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, cool. So, quick question about this, Bryce and I'm sorry, Jay Wormer. I always forget the first names. But so how do you, like, if you were to share, like, let's say you meet a business and they want to know a story, are you able to share those? Jill, thank you. Sorry. Are you able to share those with businesses? I guess what I'm curious, like.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go for it.
I'm sorry. What was the question? Share.
One of the things is like how accessible are these stories, right? So Facebook is awesome. However, one problem with Facebook is things tend to get lost. I lose things on Facebook all the time. Like, you have to go there and then you scroll down to find it, and it kind of has I guess
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A lot of them we have, a lot of the businesses that, are on our Facebook page or are friends with us on Facebook. So it goes out, and so we've gotten a lot of feedback, from other businesses that see other businesses that have hired somebody and want more information, because they've seen it on Facebook.
Awesome. Okay, so it is reaching people then.
That's I feel awesome. It's far from flawless, or
Sure.
It's got some flaws, but it works fairly well.
Yeah. Okay. And then Bryce, how about you? Do you have any?
Really similar to what Jill was saying. We do sometimes we do employer highlights. We just had a fellow celebrate 25 years with the city of Spearfish. So
Ah,
they had a big celebration for him at the city. There was a big article in the paper.
awesome.
We promoted it on social media as best we could, and so
Yeah,
really highlighted as best we could.
that's great. Cool. So that's a government government job. That's awesome. Another
Yep.
type. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been working for the city for quite a while now.
Does the person who was around when he first got the job, are they still around? Like the staff?
I think no, not the staff,
Okay.
but
Like whoever was
the
involved in that.
governor who was around when he initially got hired on came by and said hi.
Ah, that's awesome. The governor showed up
Yeah,
to a job development.
the former governor came
Former
by.
governor.
Mhm.
That's pretty sweet. Okay. Awesome. Great. Okay. Awesome. So, okay, that's the second. And then what about the third bullet? Are there any business partnerships? Are there any business people who you can, because what we're thinking here is like, what are the tools you have available? And not just, and I think it's awesome stuff goes on Facebook and, but intentionally, like Bryce, you were saying, somebody had to go tell the press to be there in the newspaper, right? And once that's there, like that stays for like that link, if it's on, hopefully it's there forever, right? Or that paper is there forever, which can be turned into or that, whatever, it can be turned into a PDF. And I think that there's the marketing materials, all this stuff is wonderful, but kind of using it intentionally, where you can kind of measure the impact of it. And maybe even, I think I said this before, but you can kind of create a plan, a marketing plan for here's a strategy essentially. Does anybody have any businesses? And again, this is when we were running, last job I had in running employment services. I think I told you all, like there was one business that we knocked out of the park. There's just, I like to say we make our own luck. We just did a good service. It sent us to the right place. We really didn't have much to do with it. The business was awesome. The employment was awesome. But that business owner was responsible for like 10 hires, like at the different businesses, because he was like, yeah, I'll talk to anybody you want me to, like connect me with them. And so having that business owner I don't like ambassador. I don't think that's because it makes it sound like something special or weird. It's just like, here's a business. This shouldn't be weird, right? It should be like everyday kind of stuff. People get jobs at work and businesses hire good people. We facilitate. Okay, great. Jill, does anybody have like a business? I don't like a business that you can call on and that they will basically vouch for you or like be willing to talk to the businesses if they have questions. And if you do, would you mind either writing it or talking about it if somebody's willing to talk?
Well, a lot of the times they do it on their own. They'll network with themselves, and then we find out through the grapevine. We had a hotel chain call us about a week ago, and we ended up getting 4 individuals employed with them in various ways. And I think we've maybe stepped into their facility maybe once or twice. Just kind of, hey, here's our card, here's who we are, and then all of a sudden they're wanting to hire. So just through word of mouth and
Yeah.
whether we intended it or not, that was a good thing on our end. Like you said, it was just, it was good luck, not dumb luck, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah. No, I think you really create I do believe in that you make your own, it's just preparation. That's an old sports metaphor, right? I know such things like just preparation meets opportunity, my old coach. So did they talk to other businesses, do you think, or was it mainly through seeing your stuff or?
A little of everything, social media posts,
Yeah.
kind of who knows who kind of thing. We, some people had been employed there before and just a lot of word of mouth.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. And then, just to go through them. Let's see who, sorry, I'm trying to, Lisa. So there's a business in Mitchell. Lisa, would you be willing to talk or will that be okay? I'm just curious. Would you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, we have a business in Mitchell called TMA, a tire auto mechanic shop. And the owner, who's a mentors the people that we take in there and who has hired, I know one other that I'm told. And when that person is at the end of their contract or the mentorship, he does offer to, if the person doesn't get a job there, he does offer to talk to his other colleagues in the business area to see if there's a job that that person would fit in. So he's, you know, we actually nominated him for the governor's award. He is an
Nice.
awesome business owner and very good at giving back to the community and always welcoming people to mentor.
Nice. Yeah, and you mentioned the other part too, which is when people help you, like to like totally recognize them, find a way to highlight that and celebrate that and make sure other people know. I think I may have told you all this when I first started learning kind of economic development approaches. Like my mentor was like, okay, this business helped. He was even like, they just talked to us, like they just gave us their time. And he was like, tell everybody that they have to go there and eat, like make sure everybody goes there and spends money, right? And when they go to spend money, they know why that you send them, right? It's just smart, again, it's not quid pro quo. It's like they were good to you, they went out of their way for whatever reason, they spent some time with you. They didn't have to do that. And so like, how can you kind of just show them that thank you. So
his employees are also equally as nice about mentoring, and they have different bays where they do different things, and whatever the person is interested in, they always start out in a tire bay, but whatever the person is interested in, they try to gear things toward that direction for the person. So I recently had a young man that was interested in the auto mechanics, but also welding. So Jose had told the young man that, at the end of his contract, if he wanted to, he could join the other coworker in the back of the shop to learn better welding and things like that. So that was actually a great thought for him to offer to that young man. So
great. Awesome. All right, thanks. And then a couple other examples. Heather, bowling alley, awareness month on the speaking panel. Oh, cool. Would you mind is okay? I started calling you, Heather, to talk about the speaking panel.
Sure.
Thanks.
We have an annual event in October, and one of the years we had an employer and an employee panel, and so he came as a business and spoke on his experience. He's an awesome advocate for why to hire anybody with a disability.
Nice. Cool. Did you record that or anything, or
I trying to think. We might have tried done a Facebook Live, which
okay,
it's somewhere, I'm sure.
Sure, cool. Nice. Well, awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I was a little not worried, but when I didn't hear back, I know you guys are doing stuff like this. It's just, I think a lot of it, well, I'll show you in a second. I can help. So I just think, so it sounds like y'all aren't, and we've talked about this before, you're not doing your only tool, you're not using cold calling as the only tool. You're building relationships, you're parlaying successes, you're getting the word out in various ways. So that's awesome. And you guys know this, again, if you have any experience, why, so the idea is we want to use all, and again, I think all of this is marketing, and I don't mean it in a crass way. It's just communication, it's relationship building. It's being strategic, and it's being intentional. It's not wasting, it's not being wasteful. Why would you, if you have somebody who's a more effective advocate with a certain industry or can get you in places, why not use that, those of you that have done the CE training, when you ask well, why do we need different tools? And the reason is because going in the front door all the time, and this is like an example of the competitive approach towards employment, where you're, basically you're doing what the business demands you to do. So if you read this, a little small, but essentially it's about job postings in Ohio, and you flow through well, that you have to have a GED, well, we help you with a GED, resumes is the next one, work experience, online application, past training, get an interview, background check, a second interview. I think I've told you all if you were at the CE training that this is the 1 in 100 poster, and it was at the Workforce Center in Northwest Ohio, so like Sandusky-ish area. And so this is tough, you know, and the joke is, it's like, you know, there's Rocky, like there's 100 people who didn't make it, one guy who did. Yay, I have a new job and a paycheck is what he says. So it's a photo I took a bit ago. And so, you know, that's not great odds, right? I mean, like that's the 1 in 100. You have, you know, and the joke was like, they were marketing their services as like, this is all the stuff we can do. But what as a user, if I walked in there, I'd look at that and say, like, I've got a 1% chance of getting every job that I see. That's literally what you're telling me here. And that's not great odds, you know, for people. It's hard. The reason we want a lot of tools is because it's hard. You know, employment outcomes, you know, successful employment is a really hard thing. It's not, and I guess it's not hard to get somebody any job, right? Just any job. That's super easy. But it's hard to get, I think, a good match, right? A quality job, a job that's gonna last, is gonna be sustainable. And in general, this process is hard just by the numbers. So we want to have some other options. And then, you know, why marketing? And again, this is another slide from the training, from the CE training, but it's relevant. This isn't about CE. That wasn't about CE, the previous one. It's about work and employment. So this is, you know, our marketing tools, the stuff y'all were talking about, they're one way to show people, right, to communicate what we're doing. It's a networking tool. You can use it to open doors, right? So oftentimes, you know, when I'll show you some examples, if you put stuff online that's easily accessible, or however you social media, or whatever, and you can access it while you're out, like meeting people, and you're in the streets, you know, you can I guess expedite or enhance the conversation, right? You can get to like what it's about pretty quickly. And we know that, you know, this is a Harvard Business School alumni page. I cut and pasted. I don't know if it doesn't still look like this, but the information's there somewhere now. And they were giving their Harvard MBAs this advice, which was, you know, networking is 65 to 85% of jobs are found through networking, they say. And so they say it should be the focus of about 80% of your lot of job search, right? And so these are Harvard Business School graduates. You know, they need no help. You know, the world is created for them. They compete just fine, right? They'll do great in that inverted pyramid. But they essentially, you know, gave a step-by-step approach to how you network, right? And they say you should spend, you know, 4 out of 5 days, or 8 out of 10 hours, right, doing this. And so it's access the network, right? Target companies, contacts, develop positioning statement, right? All this stuff, you look at it. And a lot of it can be converted or translated to what we're talking about, right? The network are businesses and other community members that you know. You know, target contacts and companies. That's like, you know, how are you going to, you know, why are you selecting businesses, and how are you going to talk to them? Positioning statement, that's kind of marketing. That's the stuff we'll look at. So, you know, I just think that, that these tools, and a lot of you are using them effectively, are super, super important. It just makes your job easier. So when we think about, okay, great. So this is you know, how important is the story to getting the job, right? The person. I just think you think about, like, how much control do you have over who the person is, and kind of who you are. And I just think, you know, typically when you're going a traditional competitive approach, you know, the placement approach, how the story is told, or how you're going to communicate, is typically controlled by the business, right? They've said, this is the pathway, you know, we need this stuff from you, resume, application, interview, etc. And I think, you know, that's one, like, there's a bit of a, you know, again, it's kind of a continuum. One end where, like, corporations or whatever, the government or nonprofits, like, we're not budging at all. You know, you have to do this. There's nothing we're gonna. And then the continuum to how you can impact that process to make it, you know, fit the person that you're representing or that you're supporting. I think all the way to the other end, which is self-employment, which is probably, you know, and has nothing to do with contacting employers necessarily, but if you think of our services and employment seekers, if somebody starts their own business, you know, the story is going to be the center to what's happening. You know, like, why this business, why you, why now? When you're approaching customers, that's going to be part of it. So just to think about that, like, how, when we market, how we're putting our how we're facilitating connections. And so, so I think, the question is, what are we doing with facilitating employment seekers? How are we helping them best represent themselves? How are we acting as brokers or agents? And then the other thing is, like, how do you talk about your organization, right? And you yourself as an employment staff. So I want to show, are there any questions or anything about that before? I'm going to show you some examples. Okay. All right, so let me stop this share. Cool. Oh, Autumn, looks like you could teach a class on this. You have to pull you in to facilitate. Do you want to share anything, Autumn, about that? Sorry, put you on the spot.
No, not really. I mean,
Okay.
I think when we talk about networking, though, it's a big relational piece, and a lot of that happens through storytelling, and of course, more of those positive ones and those success stories usually make the biggest impact. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about motivating others or empowering others, I always say that sharing those good stories allow people to feel good themselves. And when you feel and make that connection yourself, you're more apt to really buy into what our organizations do and how we can make the difference for them and make those connections for them. And so it's kind of that reciprocal relationship in a lot of ways. So
Right on. That's great. Yeah, awesome. Cool to have it. Yeah, I think that the idea of, and I think is what you said, is this idea of connecting, or of relating or sharing something or something that's in common, I can identify with, I think that's, ultimately we'll talk about, employment is a relationship at the end of the day. It's one human being typically, or group, deciding to hire another human being and spending time together. Okay, so let me share screen. Okay. All right. Sorry, it's gonna take a second. Okay, so just want to show you a couple of examples. This is a group out of Philadelphia, and again, like I'm talking in West Virginia. There's more people probably in the Philadelphia metro area than maybe in your whole state, or I'm not sure. I mean, close to my whole state. I just wanted, they've been doing it a while. But I wanted to show you just an example, and I have not, part of the training, I am eventually going to check out your stuff, again, not in a negative way, or just I think ultimately I want to understand, and I think that's ultimately, I think everything comes down to understanding. We want businesses to understand what we're saying. We want to understand the jobs and the business needs. We want the employment seeker to understand what the job's going to be. And we want both the business owner or the employer and the employment seeker to understand each other, right? Just to figure out how things fit. And we want the supports and family and advocates to understand their role, right? So it's all about understanding, ultimately. So they're called community integrated services. And Jordan, I've lost the chat again while I'm messing around. So if you wouldn't mind, or if somebody could tell me if you see a chat, I can find it again. But I have a bunch of windows open. It's just, I think, a great, they do a lot of, and I'd like to see if, I'm going to try maybe to pull Susan in, who's the executive director. She's just really great and just really dynamic. This is the organization, I think I told you during the customized employment training, and I hope I'm not telling on her here, but they found a way to create, they have a wining and dining fund where they could buy people beers and alcohol and stuff. And they would take people to Phillies games and Eagles games. And every place I've ever worked, not Griffin Hamas, but wherever we've done direct services, that was there's no way. I remember I was doing a project in Ohio and I had an executive director tell me, President Obama will have to tell us we can do that before we, before we're going to look into that. That was just something that was way, no way that can happen, but she figured it out. And I saw it happen. I was there. I spent some time with them there. But I just, you go to their site and I just think it's a really good example. What's the first thing you see, the first thing you see is people. You know, what the work is about. It's you know, and again, they're not telling you what to think or anything, but you're seeing pictures of individuals. And then, you know, I'll just go through it a little bit. So you see the top blogs, success stories, reasons our partners donate, resource center, about CIS, right? All this stuff, what we do, career services, hire talent, join us. And then you go down through it, right? Employers, job seekers, right? I mean, right here, like, I mean, this is a big area. 500 employers plus, can't be wrong, right? They had and you have to modify this for your area and your organization. At one point, it was like, join the team, or are you on the list? You know, I think that's how they grew it. It was like, here are all the great places that it's worked for. And they'll talk to you, you know, and aren't you curious about how this has worked for them, right? Susan hasn't been there since 91, but a bit about them. And then they go right into, success stories. And so, you know, there's a whole banner. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't go. There's 4 here, maybe. Or maybe more. Dennis, Lamar, Simon, you know, Adriana, maybe if I can see the last name. Ron, Julia. You know, I think, I just think it's a great example of I think getting to the point pretty quickly. And the point, what I love about it, and again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it or the right way to do it, but I think a lot of times that we talk a lot about what we do, you know, like our role and services and that kind of stuff. When business, you know, employers, I don't think care too much about that, you know, except you know, how you're going to help, of course, and you're not going to disappear, you know, that kind of stuff. You're going to be reliable. You're going to say what you want. You're going to do what you say. You know, you're competent. You know, you're a good person. But I have found that you know, employers don't care too much about that. Like, they don't really care that you're an employment specialist and that you do, I don't know, you know, that you job coaching, like, okay, or we do assessment, like, okay, what's that mean to me? You know, can you translate that to, you know, what in, you know, plain language? And I do that all the time. And but one of the things I love, and this is something I think that, you know, they have like 20 or some pages, and this is, of course, if I expand it, but this is something we started to do at the last place I worked. And it's very cost, it's very cheap, is just to start a blog, you know, which is just like, if something cool happens, like, write it down. And you can see here, it says Keith pictured. I don't see the picture. I don't know if that's him up there. I'll sort of clean it, maybe. Anyway, and you have to make sure it works. But I just think, you know, I mean, even like if you had a cool work experience, right? You were talking about at the grain thing, or, you know, obviously anytime somebody gets a job or they make a connection, it's such and you don't have to spend, like, write a paragraph, you know, and then put a picture up, get some good imagery. And then that becomes like the beginnings of that person's story. But then, you know, whatever, you know, whenever you maybe, you know, not too long, or maybe right now, you're looking to try to create something similar to that, like help somebody have a work experience, or if it's discovery activity, or do a shadow or whatever. And now you're starting to build like a library of examples, you know, that you can say, oh yeah, we do this with other businesses. And let me show you this real quick. And you can pull this up on your phone, you know. Awesome. John, could you tell me what that is? I apologize before I pull that up.
Sure. This is just a great resource to just think about when you're talking with employers, what they might understand. So kind of rehab to business language, just a really good resource that I've found over the years.
Cool, like a translator?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, they need an app for that. Like they have like Spanish, English, you know?
I know, right?
It'd be pretty cool, yeah. Okay, sorry, no, one more time, my son. Okay, sorry. Yeah, awesome. So, I don't know, I just think a cool, so blog, success stories, if we were to go through it, you know, they have the list, so obviously what we do, if I could find it, not our partners. Okay, so I mean, so immediately, right? Somebody working, you know, there are different foundations that they work with. Oh, man. Okay, employer partners. So, like, if you look at this, I mean, again, this is Philadelphia areas, right? And they're big, but I mean, that's a pretty big list. And they have it broken down, you know, education, I guess food, grocery co-ops, fitness, health and beauty, senior care, presenting, healthcare, senior living, government, also government. Sorry, my son just got out of physical therapy for his knee, and I told him I'm not picking him up. He can walk. It's right across the street. Thanks, I'm working. Sorry about that. We'll have to edit this part. COVID still isn't. My wife, yeah, my wife's back to work this week, so we're not figuring that out. Nonprofit agencies. So cool. Arts and entertainment. I mean, obviously a lot of they're big. So I thought, you know, I think a good example. There's a map somewhere with the different businesses they work with. So, okay. Then I want to show another example. I think those even the customized employment. You guys saw this. I'm sorry. I'm going to make sure my audio is working right. Share sound. Okay. Okay. Here we go.
Employment Services reinforces the expectation that adults with disabilities can and should be contributing members of their communities, and contributing can sometimes come in multiple flavors.
Scott is a productive member of our team and an important member of our team, and that's why he's worked for me for well over 2 years now. Scott was already an employee. It was Chef Charlie's idea to focus on ice cream because that was a need that we had.
I make ice cream for Gigi's and the other restaurants.
I think CIP has been a great partner with us, helping to get, you know, Scott up and running, and at Bread and Pickle at first, and now at Gigi's with the ice cream.
Well, I believe that a big motivation for Scott is the fact that this is his own deal. Like, basically he gets to be able to maintain and create his own flavors of ice cream and do it himself. He's taking responsibility.
The name of my ice cream is Scott's Ice Cream, and it's named after me.
I think Scott's great. I think it's wonderful to have him around. He definitely brightens everybody's day.
I like some of the flavors, but not all 37 that have been tried.
Okay. Was everybody able to see that? I lost my chat again. Jordan, did that sound okay? Are you able to? Sorry, I lost my chat. Okay. I'm sorry, Jordan. Was it okay? I can't see.
Yes, sorry, it was
awesome.
just fine. Yep.
Okay, cool. This is a place in Minneapolis area, community involvement partners. This is community integrated services, different. But you know, one of the things you have to think about too, if your organization does more than one thing, you know, like community involvement partners does not just employment. CIS is pretty in Philly, pretty much geared towards employment, you know, and services surrounding employment. But so one of the things you have to think about is, and is like, you know, how do you get the messaging straight? And we talked about this probably before, but you know, sometimes fundraising can take a tack that's, I think, oftentimes unintentional, but that sends a message that people aren't competent, you know, or it's kind of a charity approach. And it's not that it's bad, it's just that sometimes it's hard to jibe, like, you know, that view of people and then turn it around and, oh yeah, people can be great employees. If you don't get the story, if that makes sense. Like the example I use, and this is a bad, not straight example, but so the way Social Security works, SSDI with people is like, you basically have to prove to Social Security that you can't work essentially for them to get the benefit. I mean, they make you not work. You can't work anywhere. Well, you definitely can't work in your trial or what's called substantial gainful activity, but you also can't work near what's called trial work period level. And then like the moment so it's like 2 years typically you wait to get on, and it's not fun. And then as soon as you're on there, pretty soon you're going to get this letter from them saying, hey, you can work, and we need you to work because the budgets are tough, and you get the ticket to work thing. And so it's just something, that is just really confusing to people. You scare the heck out of them to get benefits. And then Social Security wonders, like, why don't people want to, attempt going to work? So I think that we just got to figure that out. Okay. Now here's Wayne. And again, this is like videoing things and putting it online, can be a nice way to kind of tell a clear story. You control the narrative, you control what's being said. Oh, and also the Scott video, that's a good way to illustrate. He used resource ownership, the ice cream machine. So that's something that's maybe like more complex, or business within a business, or more complex ideas where people are bringing tools and equipment for resource ownership and maybe starting a business within another business, depending on what you're supporting people with. But I think sometimes showing people that can really help, obviously, to illustrate what you're talking about versus just talking to people about it.
What do you do when you're here?
I doing chores.
Yep, you do chores. We do station duties, right?
And you do dishes.
Yep, we clean up. What else do you do? What do you do on the far side of the building? We have to roll stuff.
With the hose.
Yep, roll hose. What else do you do every time you come in?
And I do.
What about getting your gear on?
With my bunker gear.
Yeah, your bunker gear. How fast do you have to get it on?
1 minute.
1 minute. Go! All right, so Wayne has to put on his bunker gear just like everybody else. And he gets time just like everybody else. We have a standard here at the fire department. We make no exceptions depending on who you are. 51. You ready to go?
Yep.
Attaboy. 5490. Well, customized employment pretty much doesn't just apply to people with mental disabilities. I think they apply to everybody in the world. I mean, you find what you love and then you go and do it. Finding out with Wayne that he liked adrenaline and he liked helping people, really put him on our front doorstep. And he's no different than everybody else that walks through those doors, because we all love helping people and we all get a kick out of the adrenaline. Wayne is just like anybody else in the department. He does the same job. He brings qualities that nobody else has, and he contributes to the organization.
That's a Canadian example there. Okay. And then I'm not going to, I think I've shown these videos. I'm not going to show any videos of Starfire Cincinnati. This is just an example of, how, this organization has created a YouTube page. And again, I think when we struggle sometimes, like if we're at a big organization, we struggle with messaging, like the arcs, like that's, and I'm not picking, if you work for an arc, I'm not picking on you, but sometimes there's a historical understanding or thought of an understanding that follows an organization, and it makes it harder for them to tell a new story, right? I think I shared this, we did a project in Kansas, and there was an institution there that had ceased being an institution. They kind of moved people into smaller institutions in the community, and they hadn't figured out how to really go individualized, and our project was a part of that, amongst other things, individualized services. And so they still would take people out in these big vans, and they were just, you could see them from a mile away in small towns in Kansas. And so literally what happened to us when we were with them is they they had just gone like asking for community places and businesses to kind of assist with their programs, you know, and they had communicated in a way, and it wasn't necessarily the people that I was working with, it was people previous, you know, throughout the last 5 years or 10 years. And to the extent when we would pull up in these vans, you know, and part of my negotiating with them was like, can we ditch the vans? You know, can we just take one person out instead of 5? And they would literally, the business owners would literally come out and say, no, sorry, man, we don't want any, you know, like don't bother us, you know. And before we even got to talking, you know, and so, and that wasn't you know, it was a horrible thing to experience. It was based on some pretty, you know, some prior not so great services. And it was because I think the people working there weren't doing a great job of communicating, you know, what they thought they were looking for and kind of what they wanted. So sometimes that can be hard, you know. So how do you help these like in Kansas? How do you start a new story that's not somehow tainted or poisoned by what's happened previously? And that's tricky because you don't want to fool people. You know, you want to be honest, authentic. But sometimes, like, and Starfire is its own unique thing. But I just think it's a good example of how you can kind of find your own space, you know, to start telling your own story, and you can control what's said. And they started it with, you know, they created a video, and their videos are beyond the 6 years point, but where they basically, you know, in 2 minutes, they created like basically a mission statement, you know, of this is who we are. And you can watch, I've showed it during other trainings. If you Google or go on YouTube and write Starfire Council Cincinnati, you can see what I searched. You can go and look. But again, what they're doing is, this talks about their services, right? The rest of it is pretty much about people. I you know, Cachelle's story, family story, making sawdust and friendship. Oftentimes people's first names are, you know, are about Sean and Emily's story, Joe's story. So I just think it's a really, you know, this can be a really strong way. And again, I think when you do good work, and it just, you should save that. You know, you should really, every time you do something good, or even if you do something that you're not sure if it's good, just was kind of cool or interesting or not sure where it's going. You know, I just think you need, you know, it's really important to let people know what's happening, because it just doesn't seem like naturally, you know, we're doing a great job again on a whole. And to show you kind of our site. So this is Griffin Hammis. You know, we're not doing things perfectly by any means, but you know, what we do, core mission stuff, educate, blah, blah, blah. Then if you go to resources, you can find, and you know, people, you'll show a picture, you'll see M's story. If you go through it, there's a kind of a collection of stories. So there's M. And then let me show you this last one. This is a group I'm working with in Michigan. This is, I didn't do anything about, they did this on their own. This has nothing to do with my current work with them, but something they did relatively recently that I asked about, kind of the same question I asked you, you know, what's some stuff where you show people what you do. And so they had reached out to the news and they did this. So let me share this with you.
Disabilities Awareness Month, and as Michigan reopens, businesses are looking for good employees.
That's why it's so important for us to remind people that individuals with disabilities can be exactly what an employer is looking for. 7 Action News reporter Andrea Isom introduces us to a gentleman who's an incredible example.
When I first met 41-year-old Hassan Hamzi, I could not help but be absolutely taken by his charming personality and his vibrant spirit. Hassan has developmental disabilities, but he takes on every hurdle in front of him with such hope and optimism.
Someone tells you, you can't do it, I can do it better than you. And being disabled means you're powerful in your way. I believe in myself, you know, I believe I can accomplish whatever I want, and I can do it.
And STEP, which stands for Services to Enhance Potential. This nonprofit organization helped Hassan discover all he can be.
We do a variety of services for people who have a disability or other perceived barriers to employment. That young man that I met, more than 10 years ago, who I could see that potential in, he couldn't see it in himself. When he finally got that chance and it felt like a good fit to him, and he blossomed.
I had to go through to stop to get to Feast. I love it.
Feast Detroit helps a lot of small businesses in Southeast Michigan with production to help grow their companies and grow phenomenal employees as well. In that, Step and Feast have a beautiful partnership. Hassan has worked here for more than a year.
There's nobody that cannot contribute. As a society, we just have to take on the challenge to find how they can contribute, right, and help them get there. Hassan's been an absolute gem. He's working his way up, learning new skills every day, literally. It's a blessing to have him around.
When you see the appreciation someone has when they're, finally given a chance, and all of a sudden they're not just a good hire, they're a home run hire. Their self-worth just escalates. It's empowerment, and it's just wonderful to see.
I'm very proud of myself. What I'm doing, where I came from, stop, it's all a year. So that's like a big accomplishment. I don't know what's happening in 10 years from now. Just take one day at a time. I believe that sky's the limit.
Yes, it is, Hassan. When we live in a world of inclusion and accessibility for everyone. In Inkster, I'm Andrea Isom, 7 Action News.
Andrea and Hassan, thank you very much.
Cool. So I thought they did pretty good. I mean, I think it's funny, like the news voice. Like, have you seen those TikToks where there's a married couple and they'll mess with each other? Like, they'll walk in and they'll just talk in the newscaster voice and announce what they're going to do. And that the spouse is like, what are you doing? And they record. It's pretty cool. I thought that's a pretty good job. I mean, it's hard. I thought, I struggle a little bit with, well, we'll do it in, October. Like, let's, I like, national, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I just worry that, I don't know. I just think it's sometimes, it's got this monthly thing. We go through the term, but it's cool. It's being recognized. But it's not easy to tell a big story, and so they did a great job of making it about Hassan, right? And Sep was in there too, but I thought that's hard to do. I think to tell a story about employing people with disabilities, because it's tough because there's a lot of assumptions in there that I don't think match reality. But I think obviously the most powerful, the best information came from Hassan himself, and then the other two gentlemen, they were like a home run hire. I mean, he should copyright that, and I mean, that is great language, right? I mean, we post that everywhere, and then, and they're just, talking about housing excelling. And I just think, those aren't employment staff that say those kind of things, right? I think sometimes we lose perspective, or we lose the ability sometimes to be fresh, or to, just because we're in it, right? We need to have help from people who may not be, just may not have the same everyday we have. I just think I had a business. I think, again, sorry if I'm sharing those to customize employment, but I had one business, and we have it on video. And she said she's laid it out there. Like, after so Eddie, she got to know Eddie, and I'll find the video and show it to you maybe next time. But she said on camera, she said, I'm ashamed to say this, but if Eddie would have walked in just off the street with a resume, and we were highlighting how we try to circumvent the hiring process, because Eddie's was awesome, but it's hard maybe to see that right away. It took us a little time. You had to spend time in different ways. But she said, if Eddie would have walked in here with a resume, she's like, I'm ashamed to say it, but I would have said, sorry, put that in the pocket with the 10 others or 20 others, sorry, buddy, we're not. And she said, but after getting to know Eddie, she said, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but she said, he's a literal diamond in the rough, like, I mean, I would have never, there's no way I would have gotten to know this without, spending time with him in another context. And I thought that was pretty amazing for a business, an employer to say, we would have missed this great hire, I mean, I just, and to be that, like, to say, it's embarrassing to say, but we would have taken one look at him and said, it wasn't like a disability thing. It was just, wouldn't have met their criteria for like that 5 minute, like, hey, what do you want kind of conversation. So, and that came from her, that video, is way more powerful than than us saying stuff. I mean, the stuff I've gotten from like people is that you think you believe in everybody, to me, like we're those people, right? We believe in everybody. Everything's going to always work, right? Like, of course, that's us, right? But we're the advocates, right? We're the activists, but I mean, having a business owner to say home run hire, or diamond in the rough and get that on paper and then ask them, hey, would you mind like speaking here or put you like on the news? It's just awesome stuff. Okay. Cool. So I'll pull up. I think we're pretty good. I just want to show you a couple other things. And then I think we may end up ending just a little bit early, if that's okay. Sorry, let me share. Okay, stop share this. Oh, okay, that's already stopped. I think the lesson is you have to have all your windows closed before you start Zoom. I should have known that by now. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, great. So, and then just to show you this is 2018 data I can find, or it was from 2018, or for 2016 data got in 2018, I could find the most updated stuff. I'm sure it's gotten it's not as good, but just to show you like, okay, somebody with SSI, again, I think somebody with SSI is a good measure of, people who would benefit from, services the most, right? In terms of people that need the most powerful, tools, in terms of, SSI typically is poverty, people don't have, or they have limited work history. Again, it's just having access to those services mean that people are going to be marginalized typically to some extent. So, so people need powerful tools. They need VR. They need employment service providers. So just to show, I think it's a good measurement of, well, how are we generally doing? So people with SSI in 2016, and I'll find updated information, is 13.1%, if you can see that, which is actually really, really good nationally. 16.7% in 2019. I bet you it's roughly where it's at now, maybe down a little, coming back up. But it's, in my state, West Virginia, it's 3%. So 3% are working, 97% aren't working. This just counts like anybody who's declaring income. So it doesn't say you're working part-time or full-time, or I don't even think it just talks about community integrated employment. I think it's just counting if people are turning in that's saying they're getting paid. So it could count like some minimum wage, that kind of stuff. And then I wanted to show, this is DRS cases. So, and again, I think this is I think it's cool information to look at when you look at total number of people served, and then you can go through, how the exits happened. And then I just think, I think it's interesting, like unable to locate or contact is the main reason why stuff is unsuccessful. No longer interested in receiving services or further services. Obviously, if you looked into that further, it'd be interesting to kind of pull that out. But I don't know, I just think it's, if we look at kind of how we're talking about what we're doing, to me that means that like, when we think about marketing and talking to, and this is about talking to businesses, of course, there are, if you have a primary customer, which is the person, and then a secondary customer, which is the business, and then tertiary, which I learned recently means third. The third customers are just everybody around, right? Mom, dad, their services, blah, blah, blah. I think that I always thought that if we could maybe share some of these successes and tell our story to businesses, those but we'd also share those with other people too. I just think maybe, I don't know if this is true or not, it's a theory, that perhaps if again, I'm not saying you here, but just generally, if we told better stories there, I think part of it here, what I learned is that people are worried about, or people haven't found how they'll benefit from going through the rigmarole, of what we're asking them to do. And I mean that in a nice, of course, we got to get to know you. Typically, it's not just, hey, you want any, let's go get you any job. It's not, it's not really what we're doing. We want to make sure it's going to last. There's some process in every employment whether it's project search or traditional, SES or placement. There's still some process of knowing that we're headed in the right direction. And so I think maybe if we could, that 707, 677, it's pretty broad. I think if we told stories more, maybe people maybe stick it out a bit longer, right? They could see that, again, I know this is not globally, I mean, there are individual stories where you're like, no, that's not gonna matter. But, where people could understand that sticking with it, that if they stick with it, that something good's gonna happen, right? The more stories we can tell like that. I think that's maybe a bit of a, I don't know if that's a pipe dream, but I do think the stories matter, obviously, to businesses. But then I think when people are struggling, which generally, if you're not working, your life isn't going great. Hopefully people are safe and healthy and to the great. But it's if you're not working, you're typically poor. Meaning, it's hard. The other parts of life aren't going so great sometimes. So I don't know. I thought that was, when we're telling stories for reaching businesses, I do think that there's a shadow side of that, which is how the stories can relate to the people we're working with. And then this is other, again, I want to throw this out and you look at the grant, but I know that business engagement is definitely part of the training. I can't remember, Jordan, I'm sorry if we pulled it out specifically. I could look at my stuff, but I think we did. But, I just think, part of the project is I'm going to learn what you're specifically doing. So I love that you shared that stuff with me today, and I'll be talking to you more about that. But there are different ways. This is not like, this is an idea, right? It's not, I don't want to, you all are doing great work, and my job isn't to be like, stop doing that, necessarily do this, or to even tell you what to do, but it's just to share some ideas. I don't want to tell anybody what to do. Nobody, you can't make anybody do anything, or you can't tell anybody anything. You want to share stuff, and then hopefully, we can go down the path together of thinking, well, what are you doing? What's working? Any areas where you want to work on, and maybe here's some ideas. What do you think? Perhaps some tools, ways to get there. And so just some things we've seen that can work, which we'll go over, in terms of how do you identify the social, your business's purchasing power, economic power, relationship power. How do you connect with community organizations if you're not doing that, or how do you strengthen that? Everyone you'll see when you go through this, there's in the intermediate actions, there's something called active employer councils or community action teams. And that's where it's like business advisory, BAC's business advisory committees, I think they've been called, or the SELN's, Supported Employment Leadership Network. I think there's a bunch of acronyms for it, but the idea is you intentionally pull people together, business people, other community people, to help you contact employers, right? So there's just different formats for that, but I just think there's some ideas on ways that, I think maybe everybody here, or most people here, are feeling good about where things are at. And then, sorry, before I finish that thought, but just the long-term actions like referral relationship database, maybe partnering with other organizations, again, that you typically compete with, but how do we all be on the same page to share leads? I know y'all are, and again, in a smaller area, it's easier to do that. You'll see that though, every single one of these has enlist business owners as partners and tell success stories. I mean, that is the key, I think, to doing sustainable good work is enlist business owners as partners, tell success stories, just thoughts of cold calling, hopefully being the last option. You'll never, ever get away from that, right? That is just something that even in the most rural area, sometimes you just aren't able to find a way in. So you got to show up, I think showing up is typically best instead of calling or emailing, but I have to find a way to not be threatening and that kind of stuff. But I was going to finish, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, sorry, somehow Teams opened up. Okay. Video panel. Wonderful. So one thing I do want, what I'm seeing, what I've seen, like oftentimes I'm training people who are very experienced in their job, and also working with people who are pretty new. And there's definitely again, it's not scientific. We haven't proven it beyond a reasonable doubt, but there's a correlation between these things existing when somebody starts, the new staff, and then them being satisfied with their job, or having pieces of this. Because I think staff sometimes, I've met a lot of good staff who have tons of potential, who maybe don't feel like they have all the tools, that they need. And for good people, that's really frustrating. Good people, good employees want to have an impact. They want to do a good job. If they don't feel they can do a good job, they'll leave, because they want to, and it's not a bad thing from their perspective. They're a good person and they want to do good work. And I've definitely seen it where it's heartbreaking from my end, like where, for whatever reason, like you're an awesome staff person and like our whole world and people that we support with disabilities, they lose, if you're going to leave, and mainly it's because people are frustrated because they just feel like they're not doing a good job. And a lot of times it just comes back again to like, people don't have access to the tools or resources. They're not being supported by the organization. And again, I'm really excited about learning that, like that happens everywhere. In South Dakota, I think, again, I have seen that like in some rural areas, maybe it's I don't know, easier, but people are used to like, the networks and helping each other out and asking for help and aren't afraid, to go just talk to people because everybody knows everybody and you're just one relationship removed. But I haven't been able to spend tons of time, anytime really, on the ground there doing like mentoring. And I just think this stuff can be really fun from many perspectives. My favorite perspective is like, as somebody used to supervise staff, is like, I get really excited, when you see somebody you're managing, like have something good happen, and really enjoy the work and have the support and tools they need and create those success stories. I think that in our work, there's a guy I'm working with in Florida right now. It's a long story, but like, if we can help him figure things out, like you'll have these things where you can like your career is made, like you've done this really cool things happened and you can put your hat on that and that'll get you through like the rest of your life. Maybe you're having a bad day, you can always remember that, this really good work you did. I don't know, I just think helping people, have more of those kind of experiences is really important as an organization. So, and we won't do the rest. I kind of mistimed it. We can work on this as we do job development, some stuff y'all saw during of just ways to maybe, I think sometimes, and you guys aren't doing it, sometimes when exchange theory kind of features benefits, it seems like, and again, not being able to talk with you individually, sometimes when we're not comfortable contacting employers, or it's because we don't really believe in ourselves, and that always comes back to we don't believe in the employment seekers. Like I think it all begins with like, what do we do, and how do we support this person, and how can I confidently talk to a stranger, a business owner, employer, and be that person's agent, and be prepared and be confident. So I think these are just some like the exercises, ways to help us kind of think through that. But I think it always comes back to like it's about the person, and we've got to believe in the person somehow, and of course our ability to support them well. So, okay, well, so I left about 5 minutes for people have any questions or comments or anything. So it seems like y'all are doing a lot of this stuff, which is cool. I'm really, really excited to look into, find out those details. And if anybody does have that email that Jordan had sent, I'll check out what you have on the chat. But I would also love, any kind of, again, just kind of the show me is the operating kind of thought behind that. Like anything that you can share that you think that it will show me what you do, if that makes sense.
Just while we're waiting for questions, I want to say the code word one more time is knowledge. And I confirmed that the form is actually working this time. So please don't forget to do attendance.
Most times people aren't mad if we end early. It's a good way to get your class to like you. Just leave a few minutes early, but then if Jordan's in the room, that's hard to do because she can see that. But I'm available everybody should have my contact information, hopefully, and anytime you want to talk or anything, somebody I'm talking to all the time, Bryce and others are doing good work. And so Laura, yeah, you all are, I don't know if I sent the email yet, but y'all are good to move on to week 6 there. I don't know if I sent that yet. I have not seen in my inbox. I'll send that now. At this moment. Sorry, different project. Oh, cool. Okay, no questions?
All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up a few minutes early then. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your participation. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Jordan.